Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into Jacket Sports Weekly. On this episode, we're going to be focusing on men's and women's soccer, volleyball, and tennis, and touching upon some of our other fall sports. All that and more right here on JSW.
Welcome to JSW, WCTV's home for Waynesburg sports. Watch our analysts discuss fall, winter, and spring sports, and cover topics such as Athletes of the Week, phenomenal plays, and intense games on a weekly basis. Tune in every Tuesday to hear what's going on with your favorite sports at Waynesburg University, here on Jacket Sports Weekly.
Where else would you want to be on?
Where else would you rather be?
Welcome back into Jacket Sports Weekly. I am Meg Berry, and here beside me is Benicio DeFalco, and we're going to quickly talk about all the other Waynesburg fall sports, starting with women's tennis, but most importantly, Benny, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to talk some Waynesburg sports.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk about soccer. It's been going great.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I'm ready to get into some good discussions.
For sure. I'm excited too. But before we get into that in the later segments, just women's tennis right now, 1-8 overall, 0-6 in the pack. Let's just touch upon their past two matches. 4-3 loss against Teal, 7-0 loss against Geneva. Anything to add upon that?
Well, starting off with Teal, they came up real close, and it would have been their first conference win since 2021, and that would have been a good, accomplishment for this team. There hasn't been a lot of success recently. There are some individual standouts I would like to say with this team. Allie Bailey and Aubrey Burns have been doing good in the doubles. It seems like almost all year it seems like they're in matches or they're consistently winning matches. Julia Lazar was the deciding factor for the Jackets in the singles match. She came up just short, so I think there is a little bit of fight with this team, and I think they can make some improvements for the future.
Yeah, definitely. And the people you mentioned were the other standouts in Geneva as well. So they're right there. They're right there on the cusp.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost there to really putting it together. And this is kind of like a rebuilding program. Head coach Pettit is just trying to make some changes and stuff, and I honestly think he's doing a good job. Like you said, they're very close to getting over that hill.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Just based off those facts that we just stated, they have good players, and it's been proven week after week they are competing in games, which I think it's a good sign no matter of the win or loss record. If you are competing, I think that shows the potential you may have. Mm-hmm. So I think it can only be up, it seems like, for this tennis team, just based off the success and, kind of what we've been used to at our time.
Yeah, 100%, and they're getting there. But to move forward to men's and women's cross country, both teams traveled to the Muskingum Invitational. The men's team got 4th out of 5th, and the women's place got 3rd out of 4 teams. So, Benny, obviously there's been some really good standouts overall in the season, especially on the freshman end of things when it comes to the men's team. Ethan Wilson led the Jackets, finishing 29th out of 59 runners, followed by Kyle Casella and Ada McGee. But they're really stepping up this year, especially those freshmen, Ethan Wilson and Ada McGee, both two young athletes for this team.
Yeah, I think it I know we're talking about cross country here, but I think just as a whole, they, recruiting wise, I think Waynesburg did a great job of bringing in freshmen. It seems like every sport there's been freshman standouts, but the two you just named, making a big impact early, and especially in cross country sport where it's almost, I know it's a team sport, but there are a lot of individuals, but to see them perform at that level being so young, I'm pretty confident in this cross-cultural team as the years go on.
Yeah, definitely. And you said it's a mental sport. It's a really mental sport, especially, I know you're just running, and kudos to them, because I don't know about you, but I would never ever do that.
I'm not a runner.
So it's amazing that they even do this. But on the women's side of things, I mentioned 3rd out of 4 teams, but Grace Tanksley finished 3rd overall, and freshman Taylor Sievert finished 7th overall. Again, these standouts within these freshmen.
Mm-hmm. Just very impressive, like you said. Placing those that early, being freshmen, it just starts to build the confidence, and then, going into your sophomore year, you already know, you have a general understanding of what you can do and what you're capable of. So just being able to bounce off that and make the improvements going ahead.
Yeah, exactly, and to just push yourself. But their next meet is going to be 2 weeks from now on October 19th in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania at the Aubrey Shank Invitational. But moving ahead to men's and women's golf, not much to talk about. The men's golf team, had their last match against Grove City. They placed 6th overall. And I want to talk about Matt Clarpel for a second. He was the Waynesburg University Men's Athlete of the Week, and he placed 6th out of 102 golfers that day.
Very, very impressive. And, men's golf has been a topic on here that sometimes, things don't go in the way of Waynesburg, but he's been having a great season overall. And, placing 6 out of that many golfers, I think you build a lot of confidence. And golf is a sport where you have to have confidence. It's just you and the tee pretty much at all times. Yeah. It's very big on hand-eye coordination. So if you have that confidence going into it and I just placed 6th out of all these golfers. I think going ahead, that is something he can use to his advantage. Yeah,
absolutely. And then on the women's side, they haven't had a team match in a really long time. Their last match was at the end of September at the Grove City Invitational. Only a few individuals went to that. But for men's and women's golf, their last match of the season is coming up here. It is going to be the PAC tournament, which is this weekend, the 14th and 15th of October. And that's going to be at Alvin Lakes in Warren, Ohio. But that's obviously PAC championships. That's big. That's big coming into the end of the year. But that's all we have for the extra fall sports going on. When we come back, we're going to be sitting down with Brett Gambita and talking about the men's football team.
Welcome to the Eberly Library, where you can find out everything about anything on campus. Through the double doors, you'll enter a world of knowledge and academic resources. These include the Knox Learning Center, where the Disability Services Office and testing centers are located, and the Writing Center, where students can work directly with our tutors in order to hone their essay skills and get easy A's. And now, to the print collection, which houses over 75,000 books spanning across all 3 of our floors. And if you're looking for truly a peaceful place to read, we also have the Stover Center for Constitutional Studies, with various nooks and crannies for students to hide away in with a good book. And if you need us to print out something for your next class, head on to the 3rd floor at the Eberly Library.
Welcome back to JSW. Here on this segment, we're sitting down with Brett Gambita to talk about the Waynesburg University football team. But first, before we start off the questions, Brett, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good. We're ready. We're excited to talk about football.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So to start things off, Zane Cawley had some good moments this weekend against Carnegie Mellon. Obviously, Carnegie Mellon, it was a 42-0 loss, but they're ranked 15th in the nation, so that's kind of to be expected going into this game. But as I was saying, Cawley had some really good moments in this game with his run that set up for a field goal attempt. Field goal was blocked and ultimately didn't follow through. But what does the team need to do to build upon these good aspects of what was a really hard game?
Yeah, so Zane Cawley, a couple plays before the field goal, had a 24-yard run to set up a first down, a fresh set of downs. But that first play on those set of downs ended up going backwards, so that set Waynesburg back immediately right there. And then the second down play, they get back to the line of scrimmage where they're forced with a 3rd and 10, and they throw an incomplete pass. So if you have first and second down plays that go for negative and almost no yards, that sets you back for 3rd down and doesn't allow you much time, and you need to go further downfield. So if Waynesburg can just have better first and second down plays, they can extend drives, they can continue drives, and that drive could have ended up in 7 had those 2 plays after the Zane Cawley 24-yard run gone for more positive yardage.
Yeah, so we talked about Zane Cawley a little bit there. Another great performance on the ground. He had 144 rushing yards. Amongst the running backs in the PAC, where would you rank him?
I'd say he's top 3 for sure, maybe even second behind Nico Flatty. He only trails Flatty in yards and yards per game, and Flatty had 4 touchdowns against Bethany, a team that Cawley ran all over last year. So not taking a step ahead towards Bethany, but this could be a Zane Cawley legacy performance against the Bethany Bison. But yeah, Cawley, I think you can make the case that he's the number 1 running back in the PAC due to Grove City having a better overall offensive line than Waynesburg, and they cleared the path for Flatty, obviously. But I'd say, in my opinion, Cawley is the number 2 running back in the PAC behind Nico Flatty of Grove City.
Yeah, and then you mentioned already the Bethany game. So there's a bye week week off for the Yellow Jackets, and the following week, which is our homecoming game, is against Bethany. Last year, Zane Cawley made history in that game with his rushing on the ground. So what needs to happen? Like you said, you already touched upon this a little bit. Well, what needs to happen again this year for that same effect for Zane Cawley?
Keep giving him the ball. Keep giving him the ball. This was a game last year. Justin Flack was out. He was our running back last year. Towards the end of the season, he ends up missing a few games. This gives Cawley a big opportunity to perform against Bethany, and he did. He had 336 yards on the ground. I mean, that is incredible. That's the Waynesburg record right there. And in this game, Waynesburg only completed 5 passes. Tommy Burke had to start this game. Sam Barber was out. And all of Burke's 5 completions were actually to the same wide receiver. So definitely trying to mix in more of a pass game this year against Bethany could be key to get them the win here.
So as mentioned, Waynesburg on a bye this week. So Bethany, being a game that, Waynesburg's very capable of winning, would you really focus on resting up or more focusing on Bethany, getting the guys out there and competing against each other?
I think this is just extra time to make sure that we're on point for Bethany, but I also think that rest needs to be prioritized as well, coming off of the 4 straight weeks actually of nonstop football. So I think the rest needs to be prioritized, but so does the preparation for Bethany, and you definitely need to work on that passing game, as I mentioned, after only 68 passing yards against Carnegie Mellon, and whether that be the offensive line working on pass blocking schemes to allow Barber to have a clean pocket, or the wide receivers just running more crisp routes, just work on all aspects of the pass game, because it looks like the run game is one of the top run games in the PAC.
Yeah, and then to take a step back from the Carnegie Mellon game, you already mentioned week off, then Bethany. What are some good takeaways that the team can carry into this week off and then even apply when they take on Bethany?
The run game, we already talked about Zane Cawley, obviously. 144 yards, and he's now second in the PAC in rushing yards behind Nico Flatty, as we mentioned before. But a couple of other things I wanted to mention. I think the Waynesburg defensive backs played solid in the first half. They didn't allow many receivers to get behind them. A lot of the completions they were allowing were in front of them. They weren't getting beat deep at all. And Brendan McCullough and Reese Kalki, the 2 wide receivers that are atop the depth chart for Carnegie Mellon, both only had 4 catches, but with that, the wide receiver 3, Will Squibb, had 9 catches. So while we shut down the 1 and 2, but the 3 is the one who had the excellent game. But it wasn't like it was John Peduzzi for W&J where he beats you deep several times in the game. There wasn't many deep passes completed in this game for Carnegie Mellon, and a lot of their first half passing yards were just dink and dunk kind of in front of Waynesburg. But also Waynesburg held Trey Vasadis to his lowest rushing output since week 1, and Waynesburg gained significantly more rushing yards than CMU. So Gotta find the positives wherever you can.
It's the little build-ups, the little takeaways, yeah, for
We
sure.
talked about the rushing attack defensively for Waynesburg, some things that are going right, but I want to shift things into starting the passing attack here. Sam Barber had 12 completions in this game for 67 yards. Not great average-wise. He's the least amount of yards in the PAC. And then he also averages the least amount, just around 80 yards a game. Homecoming, already a game that has a bunch of hype around it, just with the festivities that go around with it. Is he your quarterback of the future?
Maybe of the near future to finish out the season. I'd say you got to ride out the season with Sam Barber, as he's probably your best option right now. He's had the most experience out of anyone on the roster and probably gives you the best chance to win right now. So I'd let him finish out the season personally. And I mean, you said, is he the guy for the future? He's not the guy for the future. I mean,
I'm talking this season.
As he's a senior.
Yeah.
But yes, this season, I'd say you keep him in there and allow him to. I mean, he allows this team to pick up a couple more wins possibly, and this team probably won't be atop the PAC until after he's graduated. But a lot of the O linemen are returning as well for whoever that next quarterback is. So hopefully a chance of contention in the upcoming years.
Yeah, that's a really good analysis. Honestly, my last question for you overall within football is the front half of the season was really hard. It was a stacked front half of the season. The only team that we contested against and we got to win was St. Vincent. So the back half of the season is a little easier, but after having a rough start, being 1-4 overall, what's the mindset that this team needs to carry to the remainder of the season?
Just staying motivated, not letting those losses discourage you. Waynesburg played a lot of really good football teams, Case Western, Westminster, W&J, Carnegie Mellon most recently. So just a lot of good football teams they've played. They got to just stay motivated and stay positive for these upcoming games here against some of the lesser good teams in the PAC, such as Allegheny, Bethany, and yeah.
So that's going to wrap up our football discussion up here. Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll have Ethan Spazarski up here, and it'll be time to talk some volleyball.
You're listening to WCYJ FM 99.5 The Hive, your home for everything Waynesburg.
Our campus radio station gives students like you a chance to work in live studio environment without ever leaving Waynesburg. WCYJ FM has specialty shows, sports recaps, and updates, weather, and live coverage of your Yellow Jackets. Tune in at 99.5 The Hive or online at waynesburg.edu/listen.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly. We got Ethan Spazarski up here, and you know what that means. It's time to talk volleyball. We saw the women's volleyball team sweep Penn State Shenango over the weekend. Let's start it off. They were able to sweep them. What went right for the Yellow Jackets? How were they able to do it?
Well, I guess I'll just do this. Get my broom out real quick. What they did right, offensive dominance. We talked about it last week. Just consistently be good from start to end. They would start really good, and they'd fall short in the end. 25-9, 25-20, 25-10. Clean sweep, no problems asked. And this was against a fairly good Penn State Shenango team when facing Waynesburg. But Waynesburg came in, and they remain undefeated at home. I think the Rudy Marisa atmosphere helps. They're really building a lot of confidence this year with new head coach Hope Johnston. And I think they were able just to consistently be good from beginning to end. And that's a confidence boost right there. I mean, some other stats, Christina Zadrozny led the team with 13 kills in this match. Maddie Dayton had 9. Paige Mortimer had 7. Two other ladies who have been very, frequent and involved in the stat leadings here. For Carissa Krall, 4 blocks. Ray Boniaga, the Boniaga name reigns well there. For women's volleyball, she had 17 assists, led the team. And Jordan Stein led the team with 18 digs. That's not really a shocker. Just I thought I'd fill you in with what she's doing, because she's in that back line of defense is absolutely fantastic. So confidence boost. They're using everything right. They're playing really well right now. You got to be proud.
So to transition out of the beginning of the season, because now we're heading into the back half of the season before playoffs get rolling and stuff, but after a lot of non-conference games in the beginning of the season, now that we're transitioning into the back half of the season, which is mostly all PAC play, what mindset needs to be developed for this team?
Mindset, build the foundation. I kind of touched on it last week. If you build the foundation and use that mindset and have the confidence and know that you can go in and play, that's going to carry you a long way. They've played some really good teams. Now, some of these teams, like in the beginning part of the year with those tournaments, not a lot of PAC teams had a lot of success. So there's a little bit of a buffer there. But if you look into it, you're 3-0 at home. That should be enough to know when you're at home, you can play. Now the away record, they haven't won away yet. They're looking for their first away match win so far. I think, but ignoring that and continuing to use what you used earlier about the confidence and, being consistent, throughout your first matches here, that's going to be huge, because there are 3 of the next 4 matches are PAC opponents, and then you play Hiram here at home, I think. But that's still a very important match here, because as we get into it, there are teams like Teal and Allegheny. They're really starting to rack up the wins, starting to build confidence themselves. So you got to be able to keep up. But just having your own confidence, really. That's my big thing.
Yeah, you mentioned haven't won a road game yet, but they are undefeated at home. We're about to begin PAC play. So what is it about the Rudy Marisa Fieldhouse that makes it so special? Or, how are they able to win these games at home, despite not winning on the road?
I don't know if I can give a genuine, actual answer, just like scientifically proving anything, but there's something about just being on your home turf. You feel more comfortable. You're more relaxed. You like it. The Rudy's always bumping. Shout the modern terms there. And no matter what sports there, men's, women's basketball, women's volleyball, the Rudy's always got student section there. That the other sports teams are there to support them. We're usually there ourselves. So, just something about playing at home, relaxed. I've talked to some of the players, because next year this format's going to change with the divisions that are being implemented in the PAC. And they themselves, especially on weekends, they're like, I love having an 11 a.m. match, 12 p.m. match where I can go out, have the match, and by night, I'm back in my dorm studying and focusing on stuff. Or maybe having a little more fun on the weekends to enjoy a weekend or break from stuff. So you don't have to worry about that traveling aspect. So I think playing at home, you're more comfortable, you're more settled in, maybe allows you to play better too. But, going on the road against Teal, especially when you haven't won a road game and you haven't beat Teal at home in a good bit, in at least 4 years, it's going to take a minute.
Yeah, and then you already mentioned about some of the great athletes that we had in the Penn State Shenango match, but who are those big standout athletes moving forward?
I mean, Paige Mortimer, over the last three, now that we're continuing to push forward, 38 kills in that time span. Riley Roofley, herself, she has 67 assists on the team as well. She's doing fantastic. She was just Female Athlete of the Week last week. Paige Cowsley, she's contributed to the assist column, 46 her own. And then Jordan Stein, 108 digs in the last three matches. And something I wanted to compare about, because I was curious, I was like, how does Teal do with digs overall? Teal they have a woman athlete, Danielle Aulet. She averages 5.68 digs per set and has 352 on the year, and she's played in 62 sets. Jordan has a little bit of a lower statistic, but's played less sets. Jordan's competing with a 5.44 digs per set, 261 digs on the year, 48 sets played. To me, Jordan's the standout gal back there. She's getting back there, saving opportunities, allowing you to retrieve yourself, get a rally, push forward. And then the offense is clicking too. Paige has been consistent her now almost 3 years here at Waynesburg. Riley's continuing to set up as she's a senior. She's been helping set up play, and same with Paige. I think there's just a connection going. Zadrozny as well has been huge recently in getting some kills for these matches. She just led the team in their last match. So utilizing everyone in their different positions really just played well for these women. And I think that's more of a team standard rather than just calling a single person out.
So you talked about the record versus Teal. It's not good in Waynesburg's favor, but they're coming off the sweep. Does this affect your confidence, going off opponent that's had your number in recent years, but, you're starting to build confidence as the season goes on. Does that affect it at all?
I think so. Now I can't say for sure because I'm not in their heads, but for me, sitting on the outside looking in, 100%. Wu's 5-11 on the roads against Teal since 2005. They're 2-8 in their last 10 matches. And if you want to be specific of the numbers, Waynesburg's won 8 sets out of the last 34 against Teal, including those 2 wins in the last 10 matches. So that is not a pretty number. But at the same time, there's got to be a way to break through that. Once you knock down that wall, once you knock down and start adding the statistics in your favor, that goes a long way. We've seen this before with them earlier. They start out 0-5. Since then, 4-4. That's a big turnaround. There had to be some adjustments made, and they're making the adjustments. They're making good plays. So, for me, you just knock down this next barrier after barrier, you're good. Don't even worry about it.
That's a really good way to put it. Just that brick wall, knocking it over, not even worried about it. But one final question for you, Ethan. Waynesburg lost to both Teal and Geneva last year. They lost to Teal in a sweep 3-0, and Geneva they kind of contested against. They lost 3-2. So what adjustments need to be made so that they can start off this season in a successful way, or I should say the back half of the season in PAC play?
Well, as my idol Ted Lasso once said, memory of a goldfish, because you can't be reminiscing on the past like that. There's some things you just can't change. So if they apply what they did in this match against Penn State Shenango of consistently being offensively dominant and winning some of these rallies, that goes a long way. That changes everything. Waynesburg's been competing for the last 2-3 years in some of these matches that they've lost. So compete all the way through. That's my biggest thing. We mentioned about the confidence, and I mentioned about the mindset. That's also a big thing. Mind over matter. There's a lot that goes into it mentally and physically that not a lot of people talk about. So I think mind over matter. If you have confidence and you believe in yourself and you go into practice and you play the way you want to play, Waynesburg can compete with a 12-3 team like Teal right now. It's not going to be easy by no stretch of the imagination, but they can compete and make a name for themselves. And I think overall that's what you want to see.
Yeah, well, that was great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ethan. But that's going to wrap it up for women's volleyball. When we come back, Michael McKenzie will be at the desk to talk about men's and women's soccer.
This is so spice. Cornucopia. Try instead of train.
I love this show.
Welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly for the last segment. We're going to be sitting down here with Michael McKenzie to talk about men's and women's soccer. So, Michael, Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Doing great. It's always a great boost to the mood when I get up here on JSW.
That's what I'm saying. Where else would you want to be on a Monday? But
No way.
anyway, to start things off, the men's soccer team had a tie against Allegheny on Wednesday, and then this Saturday they lost 4-2 against Washington and Jefferson. So after that loss against Washington and Jefferson, they fell to 5th place in the PAC standings. Top 6 still go to playoffs, but at this point in the season, there's only 6 games left until playoffs start. So are they a contender or a pretender for these PAC playoffs?
Now, normally only 4 matches into conference play. You'd say that's probably too small of a sample size to determine contender or pretender, but there's only 6 left until the playoffs roll around. So you kind of have to make that distinction about whether you believe contender or pretender early. I'm still going to go ahead and say contender. It was a bit of a rough week, especially looking in goal for Waynesburg. Michael Frankus not able to play on Wednesday. Zach Reed, the sophomore, came in relief for a match. We'll get into that a little more here in a bit, but I thought he was very solid. Only allowed up 1 goal, and they got that draw. They got a point in the table. Frankus came back for Washington and Jefferson, but the Presidents, they were really dominant in that game pretty much. They controlled the ball for the majority of the time, only allowing Waynesburg 2 shots on goal that entire game. Only 4 shots on goal over the 2 matches this week for Waynesburg. That's obviously not a good stat. That's something that's really eye-popping when you look back at it. And as they start the work week this week, that's something they definitely are going to want to improve.
Yeah, you mentioned Zach Reed, a fresh face in net for the Yellow Jackets. Just overall, what did you think of his performance? I know Waynesburg tied and he led in a goal, but overall you said a pretty solid performance.
Again, the shots on goal and the shot discrepancy was really in favor of Allegheny. It was in favor of Allegheny, in favor of Washington and Jefferson. But you look specifically at that Allegheny game with Reed in net. That many shots on goal for Allegheny compared to just 2 for Waynesburg. Allegheny really controlled the ball most of the time. You give credit to the defense as well, but Zach Reed, really solid, looked poised back there in net for Waynesburg, allowed them a chance to win that game, and even coming away with 1 point. Okay, that you get closer, or at that point, you stay towards the top of the table. You stay in the top 6 in the standings pretty comfortably. At that point, they were pretty comfortably still in the top 6. Now you're bordering on that 5, but Zach Reed did his job, gave his team a chance to win that match.
Yeah, absolutely. And to bounce forward to the Washington and Jefferson game that was this Saturday, you mentioned that Washington and Jefferson kind of had full control. And honestly, I announced that game, and from my perspective, it looked like Washington and Jefferson read Waynesburg's 4-3-3 formation like a book. And because of that, Washington and Jefferson genuinely had full control of that game. So because of that formation issue, do you think that there will be a formation change heading into the back half of PAC play?
I can't see that change being made just yet, because this was really the first match we had seen Waynesburg's 4-3-3 read the way Washington and Jefferson read it. They did a great job playing against that the entire match, the entire 90 minutes. But that's only one. They had all those non-conference matches, for non-conference matches. They're 4 conference matches into the season. So I can't see that change being made just yet. But if we go through another week and we got 2 more matches against Teal and St. Vincent for the men's soccer team, if that happens again against both Teal and St. Vincent, maybe you contemplate it. But at the point we're at in the season, only 1 match that's been done so far, I see them sticking with the 4-3-3 for the foreseeable future.
Sarpong had another goal in this game, just adding to his freshman campaign that he's been able to build up so far. How impressive is this, and do you expect this to kind of keep going on as we begin to get in really PAC play?
Yeah, I expect it to continue to go on. He's seemingly gotten better once conference play started compared to non-conference play, so there's no reason to think he's going to slow down. 7 goals on the team, leads the team in scoring, so I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. I think he's going to be the main guy to watch for the Yellow Jackets men's soccer team moving forward, and he's going to be a key piece if Waynesburg wants to stay in that top 6 and get to the playoffs here as we get into the middle part of PAC play this season.
Yeah, and now to transition over into women's soccer, they won 2-0 against Washington and Jefferson this week. That was a very important game considering they were in 9th place in the PAC standings heading into that. They honestly needed to win that game to even have playoff contention, and they did, and now they are currently 5th in PAC standings, excuse me. So my very first question for you, Mike, is how do the women continue to grow off this big win against Washington and Jefferson and continue to win?
Continue to move the ball well. It seemed like they were moving the ball from the midfield into the offensive third pretty much the entire match against Washington and Jefferson. You look at the shot discrepancy, 17-7 overall in shots on goal. I believe it was an 8 shot on goal difference between Washington and Jefferson and Waynesburg. That in itself tells you how controlling Waynesburg was of that match, and I think that was in main part due to being able to move the ball fluidly throughout the pitch. They just didn't allow Washington and Jefferson to get anything going for them offensively, and for Waynesburg, they created so many opportunities. I got the chance to call that game with Teen Shazer, and we were saying it pretty much from the second minute on, that Waynesburg had so much control, generating so many scoring opportunities, that at some point they were going to net a goal or two, and they did. Amanda Pepe and Waverly Lorne netting the 2 winning goals in that match. So it was a dominating performance all around, one that they needed. You get the draw on Wednesday, you get the win on Saturday, 4 points in the standings after not getting a point the first week of President's Athletic Conference play. Now you're tied for 6. You're right in the thick of it as we get into the middle part of conference play.
So going back to the Allegheny game, Waynesburg was outshot 28 shots to 9, but in the second half they only managed 2 shots on goal. What adjustments do you think were made at halftime to be able to stop them offensively?
I think they were able to block off some passing lanes. They were stopping how fluid Allegheny was with moving the ball into the offensive third. They were continuing to find passing lanes, dribble around some defenders, and just get some shots. I think that a big part of that was Alexis Greenleaf. 12 saves on 13 shots on goal for Allegheny. She's been stellar since she started last year in net in her freshman season. So she continues to be stellar. Back-to-back games this week, double-digit saves. That was a big part of Waynesburg being able to draw and get the point in the standings. But blocking up some passing lanes and slowing Allegheny's offense down, that was also a big part in slowing them down from a first half that felt like the Gators probably could have gotten 2 or 3 goals to a second half where, it looked like they were a team that was able to only muster up 1 goal the entire match.
Yeah, and you mentioned Alexis Greenleaf, Waynesburg University Women's Athlete of the Week and the PAC Defensive Player of the Week. So crucial element to this women's soccer team. But this week for W&J, Abby Gugi was out, who is a crucial freshman to this women's team. So how did you see the team adapting to the loss of a very important player against Washington and Jefferson on Saturday?
It felt like they were playing all 10 position players, not including Greenleaf, who was the 11th in goal, but all 10 other players on the pitch, moving them around a lot fluidly. Listed as a forward is Brooklyn Loveland, but you saw her playing back on defense a little bit, trying to stop Washington and Jefferson from moving the ball into their offensive third, and then getting it back to the midfield and getting Waynesburg back on the attack. You saw Waverly Lorne play back a little bit on defense, which she usually does, but she ended up with a goal in the match, the first goal of the match in the first half. So moving all of the players around, it was almost like a chess match with how Waynesburg really operated with everybody on the pitch, and it had Washington and Jefferson a little bit confused, it looked like. I wouldn't be surprised to see Waynesburg continue to go with that and moving everybody around the pitch fluidly. No set positions, really. It didn't feel like very many players had a set position in that match, and it looked really, it was really fun to watch, to be honest with you. So if they continue moving forward, obviously Abby Gugu, she's been great for Waynesburg. She's going to come back into the starting lineup when she's good to go. But it was really fun to watch Waynesburg adjust to not having her, and they played really well even when she wasn't on the pitch.
Well, that's going to wrap up our men's and women's soccer discussion, which is going to unfortunately end this week's episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. But we are taking a week off as fall break is coming up. But when we come back, we're going to have homecoming over the weekend, so there's going to be a lot to talk about. But make sure to stay tuned in WCTV for all Waynesburg content.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.